So you run a business called The Attention Seeker.
Yeah.
What is captivating your attention right now? What do you have to put your phone down, put your phone in the other room to stop getting absorbed in right now?
I mean, for me right now, it's this time of the year. In New Zealand, at least, it's the end of our year. As in a week, and I got 2.5 weeks left of work technically for this year, and then our summer in New Zealand. So I'm back home in Auckland at the moment, and we will have probably about 6 weeks of a pretty downtime. It's kind of like summer in the US. It's no different. Everyone wants to be out at the beach or somewhere, right? And so because of that extended time, I've got I still have sales targets to hit. So at the moment, I've got because I'm the main sales driver for the business, and that's my head. Every time I pick up my phone, it's like, how can I find or start more conversations, or have more conversations, or talk to more people, or book more meetings, and that has a flow-on effect to cash flow, and cash flow is king, right? And without it, I can't pay wages. So it's one of those things at this time of the year, it's so crucial because I'm going into a 6-week period where there won't be any new business or very little new business because of and from New Zealand anyway, which is currently our biggest market. And that's pretty stressful. So that's currently got all my attention to make sure that we hit our numbers. I'm feeling pretty confident, but I'm also one of these sorts of people who plays in the extremes. I'm always preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
I get it, man. Now, guys, this is Stanley Henry with me, born and raised in South Auckland, New Zealand, calling in from New Zealand today. I'd love to give you a chance to talk about your business, share a little bit more about your life experiences and journey, but maybe just give us the quick 30-second spiel on who you are, what you do, and I've got a bunch of questions I'll throw your way.
Awesome. So, my name's Stanley. I'm the founder of a company called The Attention Seeker. We're an organic social content agency, so we help brands build large organic followings quite quickly. We've been known for being able to do it consistently and over time, and I guess hack the algorithm, I suppose, is what we've been really good at, and being able to do it consistently for many brands many times over the course of the last few years. We've been going for 5 years now. We've got offices here in Auckland, and we're currently in the process of opening up an office in New York and expanding into the US further, which is quite cool and it's pretty exciting. It's a big step for a little New Zealand business to try make it in the Big Apple, as they say. But yeah, that's us at the moment. It's been a wild ride these last 5 years, I'll tell you that much.
I remember we first crossed paths while you were in the States, maybe exploring office space. But I'm glad we're having the chance to connect here today. You've got your espresso, assuming it's early in the morning in New Zealand. But let's maybe dive in. So one of the things that caught my attention from our backgrounds that were aligned were our respective tenure in the hotel and hospitality industry. So I spent a summer interning at the Four Seasons. I loved it. It was one of my favorite jobs, if not my favorite job I've ever had. It was dynamic. It was interesting. There was just every single day was something completely different, even though my role was really the same from day to day. Now, you spent your time in the food and beverage industry, but how did you get from Auckland, New Zealand to the F&B industry?
Yeah, so I got into hospitality, hotels, and restaurants by accident. So it's accident, desperation. I was young, I was going to university, I needed money. You pick up a waiting job to try and get some cash flow to come through to pay your rent and whatnot. And I then dropped out of university and I moved to Australia when I was 20. And I never finished university, and I went to Australia, and the only jobs I could still get because I was a dropout was in hospitality, and I had some experience and that I met a mentor. His name was Vikas Malhotra, and he pulled me aside one day after about 6 months of working for him, and he said, "Look, you're a smart kid. What are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Why are you here? Are you just here to have some fun? And it's the Gold Coast in Australia, and you just want to have some fun and fine, or are you trying to build a career?" And I said, "Look, I actually don't know. I don't have any direction right now." He's like, "All right, give me 6 months. If you give me 6 months, I'll deliver you a career." And that was it. And that was the launch of my hotel career. And he just guided me along the path and gave me opportunities and let me prove myself. And then a few years later, I was general manager of hotels. And that was he was along the way, the whole step of it. And if it wasn't for him, I probably would have just wasted another few years trying to figure out things.
Do you still keep in touch with him at all?
I did. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago, just before COVID started. To be honest, it probably was a COVID-related thing. It was pretty shocking for us. It just happened. It just happened. So unfortunately, he's passed away. But I had been in touch with him. Like we were very close friends. Like
Good.
I know his sons very well as they grew up, and he meant a lot to me.
Very good. Now, to take a step back, you mentioned the Gold Coast and how amazing it is. I've had another Kiwi on. I've had someone from Australia on. Everyone talks and rants and raves about the Gold Coast. Can you help, for most of my listener bases in the U.S., help us understand what the Gold Coast is and why it's so amazing and why we should all visit there if you think that that's the case? Because I've heard nothing but amazing things. I've seen pictures online. For someone who's had firsthand experience there in their early 20s, tell us about what that was like.
You know, to be honest, the best thing for the American audience anyway to understand, it's probably somewhat similar to Miami in that there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily originally from the US who go there. It's a very transient population. There's very fantastic beaches. It's got literally some of the best beaches in the world, white sand, warm weather. Like I don't know the Fahrenheit conversion, probably around 9,500 degrees, like most days. I think it's roughly around that, 35 degrees in Celsius. And so it's hot all the time, great beaches, lots of transient population, a lot of fun. But there's also like a really growing fitness industry and entrepreneurship industry as well. Like there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of e-commerce is a real big platform for people to like enjoy the lifestyle and build these e-commerce brands from there. And it was one of the fastest growing cities in Australia for a long time because a lot of people from Sydney and Melbourne in much colder places were moving up north to be there. So if for a US audience, probably Miami is like probably the closest similarity. It often gets compared to it.
Interesting. Yeah. First of all, your conversion is correct. So 35 Celsius is 95 Fahrenheit. So you're spot on there. So even though you dropped that, you must have taken your math classes and paid attention there. Super interesting. It's interesting. A lot of the health and wellness influencers I follow and a lot of the kind of e-commerce folks that I track online that are in that demographic or in that audience are all based out in the Gold Coast or at least post out there. So that makes sense. Now, you were in the hospitality industry for a bit. At what point did you get involved in the agency business? What was that kind of formation like for you?
Yeah, interesting. It was really a stark difference and change of careers. So I was a general manager in hotels and food and beverage manager. So I looked after quite large operations, 200-300 staff sort of thing. And when I transitioned into this world, it was actually a hard stop. I just decided to quit. I moved back to New Zealand after being away from the country for 12 years. And I decided to start building my personal brand on LinkedIn. I didn't really understand what I was going to do as a business. I just knew I wanted to start my own business. And so I started building my brand on LinkedIn. I had learned a little bit about it in the hotel industry for commercial contracts and corporate contracts. And no one in New Zealand was really doing it at the time, end of 2019 when I started. And I did it solid for 6 months. I was building connections with people, having random coffee meets with them and going to networking events that I'd found from LinkedIn. And then one thing led to another. I pretty much meeting 5 people every single day, random strangers. I was going to networking events 3 or 4 times a week. And because of that 6-month period, I'd built up quite a strong personal brand just by putting out content, meeting lots of people, and like just putting in the work. And then lockdown hit. And when the lockdown hit in New Zealand, it was pretty rough for us. We got locked down pretty hard compared to the rest of the world. Like you literally couldn't leave your house for 6 weeks at the first lockdown. You couldn't even walk outside just about most of the time. And so everyone was going, how do we meet people, do business? How do we transition to this life? We had no other option. So it was great for me because everyone saw what I had just done for 6 months on LinkedIn and said, Stan, can you help me do the same thing? And so I did because I didn't know where the next dollar was going to come from. And so I took anyone going to give me money. I was like, yes, please, like, let's do this. And that snowballed. I'm a big believer in delegating. Like I'm very good at going, when I sell something, here's how much money I need to charge you so I can pay this person to do the thing, that provide the solution that I just told you we would do for you. And I can be the brains behind it, but this person does the work. And I did that really quickly, and we started to snowball. We started to hire straight away. And it wasn't until about maybe early 2021 or midway through 2021 where I really started to realize that the benefit I'm helping people do is build brand, not generate leads. Because a lot of people had originally come to, can you help us get some leads while we're in lockdown? Lockdowns lifted, people were actually looking to build brand, personal brand. And what I'd done successfully is built my personal brand, not necessarily built a lead generation engine. I built a personal brand. And so that's when we transitioned more into the advertising world. It was about somewhere mid 2021 where people were starting to ask me for content production and things like that. And that was really like the first time, probably about mid 2021, where I started to realize that we were like a content agency. We were making content for people rather than helping people generate leads or marketing in general. We were content.
Super interesting. Now, I ask this question a lot on the show because it's something I'm always trying to wrap my head around. You left the hospitality industry in 2019. You started posting content. People reach out to you and say, "Hey, Stanley, help me do the same thing." What's you had never done this kind of freelance before. Did you go online and Google how to write a proposal? Did you go online and Google what should I be charging for my services? Like, mechanically speaking, what was that like for you? The first person reaches out for you. I'm sure you did it, for free, showed how good you were. But what was that like for you to really kind of tick and tie the operation together for V1, the MVP of Stanley's marketing agency, he was not knowingly building at the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in reflection, I've realized there was two answers to that question, or two pathways that I took. The first one is that I was a general manager of hotels. I had salespeople. I had been a part of contract negotiations. I had been part of putting proposals together for large corporate contracts in the hotel industry. So I had an understanding already. I had a really good foundation of business from running, 8-figure businesses in the hotel industry. So that I can't just remove that knowledge. That knowledge was still with me, even though it was someone else's business. And even though it was at a scale that was much larger than what I was doing as a freelancer, it's still the base knowledge. I had a mentor who taught me that small businesses are just big businesses that aren't big yet. They all run the same way. They all need all the same things. They're just not big enough yet to have all the individual departments. So they still require it all. And so I had that base knowledge. So I had an understanding, and I think that is something that a lot of people go into business maybe more as an engineer. And when I say that, like, they're the practitioner from their world, like they're really good at a particular skill set. My skill set I was really good at was business. I was the general manager. I was the CEO of the hotel. So I had a really good particular set of skills in there. So that can't go unsaid. The second thing I did is that when I went into putting proposals together and pitching people, I Googled the hell out of it. Like, what does a pitch like this look like? What do you put in a proposal? What do I need to cover off? I used resources from like people like The Future. I watched Chris Do from The Future a lot. Like, I really enjoyed the way that he sold things and value-based pricing and how he looked at it from that perspective, which meant that I didn't put any hours in. Like, I never pitched anything with a price saying this is how many hours of work you get. I just said, this is we're going to get you this result. This is what you said you wanted to achieve, and we're going to help you achieve that, and it's going to cost you this much a month. So is the value aligned for you? And so I watched a lot of him. He was really helping from a pricing perspective. I had done a lot of pricing work in the hotel space because for those of people out there who haven't worked in hotels revenue department, you change prices of the hotel rooms multiple times a day. You're constantly looking at the psychology of how people are spending, and you're looking at the rates online, and you're making
the vacancy rate and tie it all together. Yeah,
exactly. And so so I was already dialed into how to perceived value from people in the pricing world and how money changes people's behavior and stuff. So I did that, and then the actual just like mechanics of putting something together. I've just had a pretty natural skill at I have a very logical process of putting reports together, just because that's been part of my world in hotels. I actually built my proposals like I was putting a report together for the hotel owner. I was like, introduction, here's the benefits and like the value that we're trying to offer you, and then this is what it's going to cost you, kind of thing. And I just kind of figured that out from a flow, utilizing that. So it was like, I don't want to say I just like made it up and I just came to it. I was quite fortunate. I had a really strong career that gave me a lot of knowledge. And then I'm very good. I love learning. And so I had been watching Chris Do for a while. I knew The Future. I'd seen a lot of other people online that I really admired and respected. And I just absorbed all the knowledge. And then somehow in my head, it decided to do its own thing and come up with the proposal. And one last thing to add, I'm still iterating my proposals now. 5 years in, I'm constantly trying, how can I do this better and better every single time? So I've never stopped doing it.
All of that's very helpful. Let me overlay one other question on top of your answer.
Yeah,
I just had an amazing guest on named Ike, who runs a company called merch.com. He was saying he was working in investment banking in New York, high pressure, high stakes, but high earning job. He had just gotten married. He and walked back one day. He quit his job and he told his wife, said, "Hey, I'm going to go find a business because I want to run a business." A huge portion of the mechanics of a lot of this is, the personal aspect that goes into the risk tolerance of starting a business. I love your content. I see all of your amazing posts with your wife. Where were you at in life to quit your job and go freelance?
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate, to be honest. I had a good job. So did my wife. Like, we were young, but my career, because of Vickers, who helped me with my career and other subsequent mentors along the way, I progressed to general manager, and I had a pretty good job pretty early on, and late 20s. I was earning pretty good money, and in Australia, one of the best things that Australia has is it has this really robust superannuation scheme that whatever you're paid, at the time I was there anyway, it was 9.5% was added additional to your salary into the superannuation, and you cannot touch it until you're 67. And it is money that you don't even realize you're earning, really, because it just gets paid off by the employer. And I worked in Australia in pretty good jobs for like 10, 12 years. And my partner's Australian, my wife, and so she had done the same, and she had a really good job as well. And so we have this nest egg, if you would, of money sitting there in the superannuation plan that realistically we can retire on. Like, there is enough there that because of compound interest, by the time we're 67, it'll be millions. It'll be more than enough to retire on. So that's the first thing. I have the confidence that I can screw this up from now until I'm 67 and I'll still be fine. When I'm old and decrepit and can't work anymore, I'll be good. So I've got 30 years to just try my luck. So that was the first thing. The second thing I said is, like, my ego isn't big enough to stop me from going and stacking shelves at a supermarket. If I have to earn money that way, I will do it. If I have to put food on the table for me and my wife, I will just do whatever's necessary to ensure that we can pay our rent and put food on the table. So that was the second thing, that I'm not ashamed to just do dirty hard work to get the outcome I need to survive. And I've done it before. I lived in Gold Coast during the global financial crisis, where all the tourists disappeared. There was no money, and I made it through. I lived in a car for 6 weeks. Like, I know how to struggle, and I come from a very poor family. Like, we grew up poor, so I get it. So that's the second thing, right? I don't mind having to do what I had to do if I have to do it. And then the third thing is that we were lucky enough to have had good paying jobs in our early 30s and late 20s, that we had a pretty good amount of savings saved up as well. And we did our calculations. We were going to live with some family when we got back, so we didn't have to pay money on rent and housing costs, which is typically the biggest cost of a household. And because of that, we budgeted that we'd have enough money in our savings to live for 2 years before having to earn a dollar. And so that confidence of not having to desperately get money, and also that I've got money secured for my future when I'm retired, and knowing that if all hits the fan and 2 years in I still haven't made any money, I'll just go down the local supermarket and ask them if I can stack shelves. Those three things just gave me the confidence to be like, just do the right thing. Like, do what it takes to do it properly, and don't sell yourself cheap, and do it. Wait until you find the right thing to go all in on. And I was in a very privileged state. Like, I understand that, like, that's not normal for a lot of people to have that sort of privilege to be able to do that. But man, I only know now that I had it. But man, that's why I had the confidence to just go, you know what, just quit everything, go all in. We'll figure it out. Trust me, we got this, because I had these contingencies in place.
Man, I appreciate your honesty. I mean, it's just fantastic to hear. I mean, first of all, the point on compounding interest, the U.S. Social Security system doesn't, muster up to what it sounds like you guys had in Australia or have in Australia. But I mean, it goes without saying, for anyone younger listening, if you're in the States or elsewhere, just put money into an investment account and let it ride until you're ready to retire, because compounding interest, the financial literacy is a whole other conversation, but the compounding interest will put you in a position, like Stanley was mentioning. Doesn't matter what the rate is, it's time in the market, not timing the market. So let it sit in there. Also, this is not financial advice, but get your money invested and just let it ride out, so you can, if you want to take a leap, because that's the biggest thing that I've always been trying to understand from the different entrepreneurs I'm talking to. It's like, oh yeah, I just started my XYZ company, and we sell this widget for 35 cents and we have a $2 million rent. It's like, are your parents probably bankrolling this operation? I don't really know. And I appreciate you being honest and walking through kind of how mechanically you got to where you are. So now we're up into 2020, 2021. this thing's rolling. You've got your proposals out. You talked us through how you got those out. You're still iterating on it, but now you realize you kind of have a business on your hands. So at what point did it go from freelance Stan to getting this business off the ground? It was what was it? Nessian first, and then it was Attention Seeker. Or what was that process like?
Nesian, pronounced
Nesian.
Nesian. Nesian was like a side business to the main thing, which was it was literally a networking community group for Maori and Pacific Islander business owners. So Maori is the local indigenous population here in New Zealand, and Pacifica, the Pacific Islands, Polynesians, whereas the Nesian comes from, and the Polynesian there's a large population here in Auckland anyway. And my father was born in a place called the Cook Islands, which is in Polynesia, a small island, I think 12,000 or something population. And so my father was born there, so obviously I'm half Polynesian. And Maori and Pacifica business owners are disproportionately affected by downturns in the economy compared to the rest of the population in New Zealand. And so during COVID, it was a way of bringing us together to say that, hey, look, we know you're struggling, we're struggling. Let's all at least provide some support for each other as we go through this tough thing through COVID. So we did it as a weekly catch-up every week during the lockdowns. And then when lockdown stopped, people were like, can you continue to do it? That built into an amazing community of us all supporting. It no longer exists only because we all sort of said to each other, like, hey, we've all done pretty well. Like, let's go out and do all these other things we can do to help more people. But this group of people, we're good. And we're good because we did this. So that was the Nesian. At the same time, we're building the Attention Seeker. And I knew that I had the business. I knew I had a real business on my hand when I hired who would have been the fourth and the fifth person. And the reason for that is I already had three people working for me. I had Alicia Cooper and Libby. And those three were like, when we had the three of us, or it was four of us, sorry, it was a little crew and doing little things, but it still felt like kind of like I was a freelance and I just had some people who came in every day and helped me do some of the work. It didn't really feel like a real business. We were working out of my kitchen, like literally out of my house. And then when we hired the next two people, we also went into another lockdown here in New Zealand, and it was actually a longer lockdown. It was less restrictive, but it was still a lockdown at the end of 2021. And when we came out of that, so I'd hired those two people right before we went into lockdown. So they started with us in that second lockdown. When we came out of that second lockdown, we had actually signed a lease for a proper office in an office building. So there was now 6 of us, plus my wife. Actually, she had quit what she was doing. She was in the financial services industry. She had quit that, come full time. So it was actually 7 of us, and we had a real office in the city, like properly in the like central business district of Auckland. So it was like, wow, we've got rent and 5 salaries apart from me and my wife to pay. Like, holy, like this is something here. Like we have to. There's a certain minimum of revenue we have to make now, and it's quite high. And that was, I remember sitting with my wife thinking, man, like we can't just like take this for granted anymore. Like we've got to try. Like we can't just fluke our way through this. Their livelihoods are on the line if we fail. Like we've got real team members who have rent and mortgage payments to make, and we have to pay our rent. Like we can't screw around anymore. I still remember this conversation where let's be honest, my wife had that with me because I'm the dreamer. So I'm the one who's just like, yeah, we can do whatever. And she's like, no, Stan, like seriously, like settle down for a bit. This is serious. Like, have we got our forecasts in place? And like, I know business and I've done that, but it was just a sort of like a moment in time where we sat there and we're like, okay, this is no joke. Like, this is real. Like, we can really take this and scale this.
Super, super cool, man. Now, you had number 7. What are you up to? How many employees are you up to now?
34 of us now.
Okay, so you guys have almost 5x since then.
Yeah.
Talk me through what that was like. So you had 7 employees on at the time. You're going out and leveraging your existing network to build brands. In today's day and age, algorithm, AI, LLMs, all the talk of the town. How are you staying up to speed as a business owner that wears the hat of the CEO, that's trying to make payroll, that's trying to do BD, that's trying to operationalize everything? how are you staying up to speed on all the trends? I'm imagining it's probably just relying on a lot of what your amazing team is helping to provide to you. But how are you staying on the forefront so that when you're going into a pitch meeting or when you're trying to stay up to date on market trends that you're ready to go? What do you use as your primary research?
Yeah, I think for me in the business, this is probably where I add the most value to the team because I'm someone who continuously is learning. Like, if you look at my YouTube subscription list, it's just like educational content, most of it. And I have a very curated algorithm on Instagram and TikTok of like I'm very deliberate and intentional with how I consume media. Not just to only have education, but also to like understand the human behavior of how people are using this. Like, why is this video at 40 million views? And asking those questions and trying to figure it out and coming up with hypotheses. So I'm like very much into that world and trying to understand. I just like, my brain can't help but try to solve for what's happening here. And because I don't have to deliver any of the work that we do for clients, like I'm not operational, I don't make the content, I don't do the strategies. I help the creative team slightly just because of this knowledge that I've got, but we have a creative team who does all that. I just do the sales and talent. Let's be honest. Of course, I'm the CEO and I'm a leader, but we also have a really strong leadership team. So my main job is bring in new business, and most of that's done through the brand that we've built and the millions of followers that we have across all our platforms. So that does a lot of the heavy work for me. So all I'm having to do is convert. And then the other bit of accountability I have is product development. What are we doing? Where are we pushing things? What else can we sell to clients? What else can we do? And my way of doing that is two things. Consume with intention, making sure that I'm consuming the media and staying ahead of it. AI, like play with it, watch TikToks, watch Instagram, look at YouTube, what's happening on LinkedIn, all these platforms. And then the second part of it is, as part of the iteration, is go and test it on our own platforms. So I don't just like make up a hypothesis and sell it to a client. I actually like make up a hypothesis, either create a brand or go to a brand we already got and just like test it out and just be a practitioner and just try it. And we've done that plenty of times. Like there was a point in time at the start of this year where like, could we make an internet TV show? Like, is that something we could do? We're seeing that they're really popular now. There was obviously a few outliers in the beginning, but like now they're everywhere on YouTube. And so we created a dating show, and it's been running for like, I don't know, 10 months now. And it's just cracked 18,000 followers across its platforms at the moment. And so that was us like iterating and testing and looking at it. And that's how I stay here. I watch with intention, and then I actually go and take my hypothesis and try it out and then iterate until I figure it out. And then once I figured it out, I go to our clients and like, we can do this now. Like, do you want it? And that's literally all the way along. I did that with LinkedIn. It was essentially the same thing, right? I knew how to use LinkedIn. I did it. I built my brand. And then people were like, can you do this for us? And then we figured it out for TikTok, and then we figured it out for Instagram and podcasts and YouTube and such and such. And so that's how I stay ahead. I just like watch and consume a lot, and then I try it myself until I figure it out, and then I sell it.
Using your own business to validate proof of concepts and minimum viable products and then repeating that's super cool. I saw your all's coffee shop series. I was like, check your coffee, and there's the knife in the coffee. I mean, yeah. I see what you guys are testing and put it out. Now, I want to ask a question. So consuming with intention sounds amazing. It's definitely easier said than done. When I was getting the podcast up and running, it's so easy to get sucked in. I know there's a lot of tools, a lot of apps, a lot of things out there to help people consume with more intention and to monitor screen time and whatnot. But again, mechanically speaking, for you as a business owner, how do you set limits for yourself? Do you like just click certain hashtags? Like, how do you make sure that you don't fall into Zuckerberg and everyone else's time loop?
Interesting. Okay, so when I think about it, consuming with intention, it's not about my limiting of my consumption time. It's what I'm doing in that time. So I consume lots. I probably consume 3 or 4 hours easily a day of media on social media platforms, YouTube, etc. But maybe more actually, I don't know, but probably about 4 hours. Definitely 4 hours that I'll call intentional anyway, let's put it that way. And the thing I'm doing, instead of just like, I am scrolling, and sometimes I need to let myself get lost. So the algorithm has its time to figure out, like, based on your behavior, Stan, we're going to show you this thing. You got to let it work. If you just control the algorithm too much, it's just going to be this like curated thing, obviously, because you're like intentionally telling it what to do. But I'm trying to what I'm trying to do is go, let me scroll through like a normal human, try get everything out of my head. And then when I stop, interact, open up the comments, hit share, the reaction of me going, oh, I should share this as a team, like all these sorts of things. I ask myself, why? Why did you do that? What was it? Like, what made you do that from this video? And then I'll just write it down or remember it and have things. And if I am scrolling for a while and I'm getting nothing, I'm going back and I'll scroll back and I'll be like, why did I scroll past all these videos? Like, why are they not capturing my attention? What's going wrong here? And so that's what I mean when I'm saying with intention. I'm trying to ask myself, why am I behaving the way that I am on social media or whatever platform it might be? And then as a team, we have these conversations regularly. We have this thing on Friday afternoons from 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m., which is, we call it 10x, which is let's 10x the way we think. So we're not thinking linear growth, we're thinking like fundamental step change in our thinking. And we'll talk about it in those sessions. We'll say, what have we seen or noticed? And then we get this collective mind saying, well, I've seen this and I've seen that. And then so from all of that, then I'm going, okay, so it's not just my own human behavior I'm watching, I'm seeing the human behavior of all 30 of the staff. And then we're getting this like all this input. And then from that, I go, hypothesis here. Okay, this is my hypothesis for what's happening. Let's go test it. And if I'm wrong, cool. We're wrong. What's the second hypothesis? And so it's just a scientific method, right? There's like nothing crazy about that in terms of humans understanding. But I just think where most people make the mistake there is, oh, I saw this one thing that was really cool and therefore I'm going to copy it. And I just don't think that's enough depth of thought to go on why it worked. And it's so shallow, and doesn't mean it's going to repeat for you. It doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. It doesn't even just mean that, like, was that just a fluke, that one video, or was there something deeper there that why that went well and why it was a good thing to replicate or at least use for your future campaigns? And so that when I say intention, that's what I mean. Not going, am I wasting my time on social media? Sometimes I'm trying to waste my time, so I get my brain into the mode of, okay, now I'm trolling, like just trolling through social media.
Yeah.
You know, I want that sometimes to see what I do as a human.
Yeah. What I've constantly been trying to juxtapose in my head, and maybe this is a hypothesis for you to help me resolve, which is, I think there's two camps of virality and popularity on social media, or how you break or beat the algorithm to get your stuff towards the top. I think it's either the camp of the Rick Rubins of the world that says, hey, put out content that's organic to you, that's true to who you are, that's might be weird, might be different, the form might be different, but the right audience will see this. If you're doing quality good things, the right audience will see it, they'll latch to it, and you'll grow organically. And then there's the people like the Mr. Beast of the world that are algo hackers. They are gonna figure out what they need to do, whether it's the thumbnail, the face they're making, the colors, the the attrition rate adjustments, whatever it is, to beat the algorithm. I think those are the two kind of worlds of social today. I think people like yourselves are helping to kind of bridge that gap. But I'm curious, any thoughts on that for those kind of two camps?
Yeah, it's a great conversation. I have this conversation often. I think they're actually trying to do the same thing. And I think like Rick Rubin's an interesting character because he's also created some of the most, some of the biggest tracks of all time. And he's amazing at what he does, and he's an artist. And I think artistry is something that artists take for granted, but most of us aren't an artist, right? Most of us, we're craftsmen. We just like do something, but we don't have that artisan approach to it. And the artists in the world, some of them are just amazing. Taylor Swift writes a song. She's just got a thing about it. She just knows what she's doing, right? I could probably write a song too. It's not going to be what Taylor Swift does, but I could iterate on it fast enough that I could probably eventually write a banger. Like I could probably do it, but I'm never going to, because it's not my world. I don't want to play it. I'm not a music related. So there's something around artistry, which I just think is, we can't ignore that some certain small population are just very good at stuff. So when Rick Rubin says something like that, it's like, yeah, good, but like, Rick, like, you're a musical genius. Like, there is a different thing when you do something, just putting out the thing you love, it is going to be good. when I do the thing that I love, I'm not an artist. It's just not going to be like that. I can't ever get it to that. So I need a little bit more data and science to figure out and theory around it, right? So that's my first thoughts on that. I think they're actually trying to do the same thing. Rick Rubin can just do anything he wants because he's good. He's stupidly talented, right? Like, don't get me wrong, he's one of the most talented people in the world. So that's something there. Most of us are not that. Most of us are not that talented. The Mr. Beast of the world, he's much more in the camp that I play in, which is like he's tested and iterated over such a long time that he's been just like obsessed with it, that he's been able to turn himself into, you know, biggest YouTuber in the world. But where I see the bridge is that the algo hackers, the guys who are doing everything they can to get all the viewership, what they end up figuring out as they go through this process, and you'll see it actually with Mr. Beast and what he's done, is what they're trying to figure out is what is the most relatable human truth in the story that I can find that most people will resonate with, that the majority will resonate with. And how can I get it up to that? So people will often be like, oh, you know who's a good example, which was easy for me to explain, is Mark Rober. Mark Rober on his channel, he's like 50 million YouTube subscribers now. Absolutely huge. Teaches engineering and science, right? For the most part, most people don't care about engineering and science. Like, when I say don't care, it's not they're like, oh my God, can't wait to go watch an engineering video. Most people don't do that. What he was able to do is to take a human truth, like getting your package stolen off your door front, and turn that into an engineering video. So he took Amazon packages getting stolen from your front porch by, you know, people that we all know, we all understand what that is. We all have that feeling of getting our possessions stolen. And he turned that into the engineering of building the glitter bomb that he ended up building, which, you know, that series has had, I don't know, 300 million. That there, people don't really understand what he's done there. He's made a science video, but he's done it by hijacking your fear of loss. And that's a human truth. All humans have this aversion of loss, a fear of aversion of loss, right? And well, aversion of loss. And so that's what he's hacked, actually. Yes, there's a bunch of tricks that he's worked in for YouTube to make it work best for YouTube's platform. But the real trick of what he's done is he's gone, I know you don't want your packages stolen and you would love to get back at the guys who did steal them. You would love to get that revenge. Well, here you go. I've done it for you. And while you watch it, I'm going to teach you some engineering. And that is just like, people don't see the depth and layer of the storytelling that he's been able to do. And that's what we try to do with our clients. It's like trying to figure out, like, I know you want to talk about accounting, but no one cares about accounting. Like, no one cares. Or telecommunications providers. No one cares about telecommunications, but they do care about the stories that telecommunications enables. We do care about humans connecting from long distances. We love what you and I are doing now, halfway around the world from each other. Technology and telecommunications as enablers. That's an amazing story to talk about. We can find a fundamental human truth on connection there that we can now make content about. And that's something that everyone will watch, but I can teach you about telecommunications at the same time.
So good, man. I got two more for you and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
First of which, if you could have any creator today come into the attention seeker and come to the New York City attention seeker office to meet the team and talk about where they think the world of social and digital is going in the next couple of years, who would that person be that you think that your team just needs to hear them speak? Who would that person be?
That's a really good question. I'm actually split between two people, and I'm going to say
give me two. Then that's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to split between two, and they're pretty big time people. I mean, one is Mr. Beast, because I just think that he hasn't lucked his way to where he is. He absolutely knows what he's done. And he knows it inside out better than anyone in the world. And I'd love for him to share that iterative process he's taken to learn it all, because that's what we try and instill in our team, right? And the team love the concept. They get it. But it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to constantly break the thing you're doing and try go again. It's really hard, especially employees. Like, they don't want to be in trouble for doing the wrong thing. And I'm here going, break it. Like, break. But we just got 1 million views on that video. Why don't we do it again? It's like, break it, see him get 2 million views. You know, like, what can we do? So I'd really love that for them to hear someone as a cultural icon that he's become, to hear his process and that he constantly does it. We hear it on podcasts and stuff, but it's a different feeling when it's in the person.
Of course, yeah.
Person. And the second person is probably Gary Vee, because given all the hype and stuff he does, love him or hate the way he speaks, what I love about him is that he is also that same person. Like him, I often catch myself saying similar things to him when I go watch his video, and I'm like, oh my God, I sound like a disciple or something of Gary Vee. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but like I speak almost the way he's doing. I love him, by the way. Like, I think he's great at what he's done and what he's been able to build. But there's this like idea, this concept that I have that I call it the cool uncle concept, where when you're a kid and your parents are telling you something, you don't want to listen to them. But when the cool uncle comes in and he tells you the same thing, you probably listen because the cool uncle told you. And I kind of feel like the same thing with my team. Like, I tell them all the stuff and my theories and things, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just Stan. Like, he's just doing his thing. And then the cool uncle Gary Vee comes in and he'll tell them the same thing, and then they'll get it. And it'll hit them a different way, and they'll accept it. And it's not that they don't trust me or believe me. It just hits differently when the cool uncle tells you. And so I think it'd probably be those two people, because they're probably big inspirations in terms of their philosophy on iteration and constant growth.
So both great answers. I mean, Jimmy Mr. Beast is unbelievable, and I personally love Gary Vee too. And again, to your point, love or hate him, he's divisive, but I can't get enough of what he puts out into the world. As we round out here, so help me with this. So I've got my podcast. I'm trying to build my brand. You get a customer or a prospect that comes in the door. What's the, assessment you guys make on brand building? If you're getting a fresh prospect through the door, what are you looking for? What are you suggesting? Like, not the attention seeker secret sauce, but like, what do you guys look for? What can you guys build for a customer that comes up? We've got people listening who have their own businesses. If they want to employ your services, what does that look like for them?
Kind of what I've said already. It's like finding the human truth that you want to speak to or can speak to, right? So you're going to have a product or a service that you want to sell. And what we'll ask you is like to continue to ask why people want this and how does it manifest? And an analogy I've been using recently, and I'll use it again because it's top of mind right now, is like, if I was to make a video about Red Bull's marketing strategy, a certain amount of people would watch it and they'd be interested in it. If I could layer that up again and go, how will Red Bull build a media company? A few more people might want to watch it, and I could still teach the marketing strategy. If I then talked about why Red Bull invests in all these sports, another bunch of people do it, but I could talk about the media company because that's what they built and that's how they market their product. But then if I said something like how Red Bull broke the most world records in the world, now more and more people want to watch that because everyone loves world records and people know Red Bull, and I can talk about the sports that they did and the media company and then all the marketing that they did. And so when I'm with a client, I'm going, okay, I know that you are trying to do marketing, but like, how do we layer this up and add depth to it to get to this conversation? Now we get to this conversation, we're trying to ask ourselves, how does that manifest in many ways inside you and your business, your experience that you provide to customers and whatnot? Once we start to understand this world and behavior of you and what you're trying to tell, our next goal, so that'll help us, define the single-minded proposition. Now we know. So that single-minded proposition is just nice words on a paper and it doesn't do anything. So then what we've got to figure out is what we call, what is the TV show? Like, what TV show are we creating here? And what we mean by that is like, literally like a social TV show. It could be. The TV show could be a newsletter. The TV show could be a podcast. The TV show could be some ad campaigns. But what is a TV show? What is the pilot episode of this show? And we take it to the world and they'll get it, and it ladders up to that single-minded proposition, and it's a vehicle to tell this message to people. So then we have to design that. And that part, I think, is our secret sauce of what we do special, better than most, or at least what we think we do the best. There isn't any secret sauce in it, except that we've got a bunch of smart people who sit in a room and just like literally figure it out. And it's not a linear process. It doesn't just be like, oh, if we do 3 sessions, we'll get to it at the end of the 3rd. It could take 9 over 10 weeks or 2 over 1 week. But it's just like letting your brain trying to go, we know the single-minded proposition. How does this vehicle work? And once you do that and you create this TV show, and let's say it's for an Instagram strategy and you're trying to build out an Instagram profile, we figure out the social TV show that we're creating from the Instagram channel. If you do that work right, the content production part of that, the making of all that content, is super easy because you've done all the foundation. You're just creating new episodes. of this show. And once you get to that point and it becomes easy to make the content, then you can make more of it. And if you can make more of it, you've got better chance of iterating to find the secret, like the piece that like finally lands. And then once it lands and then it's over, then we can just roll on through and get the views, get the followership. Once we've got the viewership and the followership, now you can start directing that audience to do other things like, subscribe or whatever you want to do. So that's kind of what, when people come to us, it's like, we've been doing some social, we've been throwing stuff at the wall, nothing's really stuck. I really just need like to make this process easier. It's like, okay, cool, come sit with us for 8 to 12 weeks and we'll figure it out. And then once we figure it out, it's going to become real easy.
Stansplaining. I love it, man. Absolutely love it. Now, I also really like the point about leveling up to add a layer of depth. It's almost counterintuitive, but
yeah.
I like the way you stacked that up, which is, again, counterintuitive to get more depth of what you're actually looking to get for your single line. But all of this has been better than I could have imagined. There's so many, you've dropped some crazy knowledge bombs I want to go back and listen to and chop up. But so I appreciate your time. For those who are unfamiliar with you and the Attention Seeker before this, where's the best place for them to get plugged in? I'll obviously plug it all in the show notes, but anything you want to drop for my audience, feel free.
Yeah, look, I think there's 2 things that I would say if you want to learn more about us. Follow the Attention Seeker on socials, but more importantly, go subscribe to our newsletter, Your Attention Please. It's just like everything we do, put into 2 articles every single day. It's a bunch of knowledge. It's free, obviously, and it has everything else that we do as a business through that newsletter. That's my favorite thing. That's my favorite piece of content that we create, to be honest, is the newsletter. I absolutely love it myself. It's called Your Attention Please. If you Google it, you'll probably find it. Otherwise, it's on our socials.
Awesome. Stanley, I appreciate you, man. This is awesome.
Thanks, Arjun. Appreciate you having me. It was really cool.